Hey, friends. Get out the trowels, get out the scoops. We're going to be weeding the narcissist garden tonight.
Oh, goodness.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 158 of Restitching the Tapestry. It's good to see all of you. Hope that you are doing well. Oh my goodness. All right, another week. It is
Yes.
almost mid-May. How are you feeling about that?
I am excited because it's actually warming up. I went to the park this week and I was reading out in public, and I had to move into the shade because it was so warm that my Kindle almost overheated, and they tried to turn the sprinklers on me.
Oh no.
I was like, no, don't hit me with the sprinklers. And they were like, oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. I thought you left. And I was like, no, I didn't leave. I just went into the shade. And they were like, we can turn those on anytime. Sorry about that. Let's turn off the sprinklers so you don't get soaked.
Oh no. Oh, checking out the comments. Arpy left a comment earlier saying that I might miss this episode. Oh, Tiffany Gray is here. Hello, Tiffany, my
Hello,
dear.
Tiffany.
Oh, Arpy is here. Welcome. New version of WWFM tomorrow. Arpy, I really suck with acronyms. You'll have to let me know what that. I can't remember what that is. What have we been up to? So you've been enjoying the outdoors. Anything else exciting that you've been doing lately?
It is my off week from university, so I am just enjoying the time before my next college class starts up, which is American Renaissance.
Ooh, that should be interesting.
Ooh.
That should be really exciting.
So, yeah, and I signed up for a meditation retreat at the end of the month, so I'm really excited to go do that. I'm gonna go off to Iowa to hang out with all of the TM people in Iowa and try to keep my mouth shut for a week of silence. Which, knowing me, it's gonna be hard to keep my mouth shut.
We're both chatterboxes. I think any expectation for us to be quiet would be impossible to do.
I know.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be fun. I hope that you enjoy it. I know it's been a while since you've enjoyed some traveling, so might be good to get out of the immediate area and to enjoy some relaxation, right?
Absolutely. What about you? What have you been up to?
Speaking of traveling, well, my fiance and I and a couple of friends went to Traverse City this past weekend. We were celebrating, 1 year engagement. My friends were celebrating their anniversary, so we had a weekend of relaxation, eating, and wine tasting. And Ari, I ate so much food. I ate so much food, but it was really good.
It must have been.
Oh, was it? It was so worth it. No, it was really great. It was very rejuvenating, and I think that I just think that every once in a while you just need to get away. You need to get away from things. You need to look at a different scene. For me, I'm not a huge traveling person, but if I'm able to drive a couple hours somewhere and spend a night or two and then enjoy some good nature, I'm pretty good. That satisfies my itch to get away.
Plunk yourself into a good vineyard and look at the plug yourself in a vineyard and look at some pretty views from up on a hilltop.
Yes. RP says, "Oh, a new Adam Lambert song, a version of Okay, cool. Love that. That's gonna be exciting." Tiffany Gray has a fluffy sweater. It's kind of sweater weather today here in Michigan. It's kind of chilly.
I know. I was thinking that even though it was warming up, it was kind of chilly today. I was really tired today because it was kind of gray out.
I know. Tiffany says, Ari, maybe put a big sticker over your mouth that says, shh, to help you keep your mouth shut. Just kidding. Oh, that's too funny. And then Jackie's here. I'm sure Britain ate more than you. I don't know. I ate like a voracious manatee.
Oh,
And proud of it.
yeah.
Proud of it. I'm not mincing words here. I was proud of it.
You're not being self-deprecating, are you?
No, no. I sure am not. And I'm not being sarcastic about it either. I genuinely mean. Um, but but ultimately though it was great. And since then I've been just like cleaning, doing some gardening. I've been getting some writing done. I've been trying to like update my blog on my website. So if anybody is interested, I just wrote an article about taking breaks between creative projects. So if you're interested in reading that, like I kind of yammered on for a long
It
time.
was such a good blog. It came to my email, and I was like, "Ooh, Donny blog, right to my email."
You've been doing a lot of writing too.
Oh yeah, but I really appreciated your blog because you really talked about the fact that you know, not everybody's creative process is the same. That like even though say like my process, I write 6 poems a day, but even like my process, I get frustrated with it. So I
Hmm.
really appreciated the fact of like not pushing yourself beyond your limits and like allowing yourself to take breaks and not going beyond what you feel physically possible to do. I really
Hmm.
appreciated that, and it really gave me pause for thought because it's like lately I've been really feeling frustrated with my creative process, and I'm wondering if taking this meditation break, where I don't write for a week, or if I don't write for like a period of time, to just give myself like a chance to kind of like rest and relax and kind of
Yeah.
recuperate and take in like some mental thought will help me with my creative process.
So kind of like a factory reset. Like I think that would be that's why I took last year off, honestly. Like I mean, like I mentioned in the blog, I did do some writing last year, but like I significantly scaled it back and I think that it just allowed me to really soak in like like I know one of my issues is that I don't read enough, and I know for me reading helps inspire me to do more writing, and now that I've made a little bit more time for reading, that's been kind of like allowing me to get more so in touch with my creative spark. So, um,
I love that.
oh, Tiffany, you're so sweet, and you're not a nutcase. You're not a nutcase.
Aw.
Tiffany says, I've been wanting to write some more, but writer's block has been kicking my butt. Right? See, that's why I took last year off, is because I felt that writer's block sitting in and it started to impact the quality of my work. Now, like, I know sometimes people can push through it, but for me, I have to be very careful because if I push through writer's block, sometimes it can make things I think I mentioned in the blog, it might make me resentful.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be resentful of the art form, right?
Mhm.
So, current event snapshot. There's been some interesting stuff going on. So the Met Gala happened. Was it a few
Yeah,
days
and
ago?
the theme was Garden of Time, which had to do with like the possibility of like climate change. And so people were dressing up in these like because it has to do with a J.G. Ballard story about
Mm-hmm.
like this approaching army, and this couple has this garden of these glass flowers. And so every time they cut a flower, it pushes the army back. And so they only have a finite amount of flowers, and so by the time the army gets there, they turn to stone. So that's kind of
Mm,
what the theme was, and that's why the outfits looked the way they did.
yeah.
But I think it's interesting what you put in the notes about prices and about celebrity culture.
Well, so I want to preface by, I'm glad that you provided that context because obviously the Met Gala is designed to raise money for the arts, right?
Mhm.
Um, but so there's been like this kind of slow growing social media movement on like TikTok and Instagram where people have been kind of protesting celebrity culture by unfollowing celebrities.
Mhm.
Because if people unfollow them, then celebrities cannot benefit off their clicks, their engagement, and all of that. Just because
Mhm.
obviously there is like this distinct classist notion of celebrity culture, and so I like there's been a lot of people, especially on TikTok, talking about like the outrageous cost of attending the Met Gala and contrasting it with like how so many people are actually struggling to pay, for their housing, for their food, for like very basic human things. So
And here they are
the
modeling things like $10,000, $20,000, like Versace or Gucci or Tommy Hilfiger
oh, if
outfits
that.
that are wild and that look insane. That these overpriced, they're basically models for these designer houses. And
Yeah, they're kind of, I mean, they're walking billboards. Now, don't get me wrong, like, there is, like, a beauty and an artistic aesthetic about it, and of course it's for a good cause, but, like, it,
it's expensive. It's an
yeah.
expensive market.
So here are the statistics. Here's the cost. So first of all, the Met Gala was invite only.
Mhm.
So very elite people went to the Met Gala. Individual tickets were $75,000 a ticket.
Which that's the price. That's not even. That's like a vehicle, like buying a vehicle just to go to a gala.
I don't even make that in a year.
That's what I'm
Like
saying.
it's wild. And then if somebody were to want to buy like an entire table there, $350,000.
I don't think I've made $350,000 in my entire life.
I don't think I have either. Now that I think about it, but um, but this movement has been very much growing because like people are so tired of like the class like we were talking in the background that it almost echoes, metaphorically speaking, the Hunger Games, right? Where like there's like this very elite group of people who have like all the money in the world when the top 2%, right? Whereas like there are so many other people who are just struggling and sometimes can't even make ends meet, right?
I'm thinking of the Walmart two cookies, because we're in a recession. You can tell we're in a recession because Walmart sells the two cookie packs, the sugar cookies that are like the two
Mm-hmm.
cookie. And I'm thinking of just like when I think of like all of these like ostentatious displays at like the Met Gala and stuff, I think about like how people can barely afford the two cookie packs at like a
Right.
full pack of cookies at Walmart.
Yeah. So I just think it's very telling, and I just wanted to talk about that. And we actually are going to be doing another episode later in the season called "The Cost of Fame," where we kind of like delve into this a little bit further. But let's see what happens with this movement, if it keeps growing or not. But I think like being that there's been a lot of like criticism of like late stage capitalism, I think this is going to be discussed more and more. You
Yeah.
know. Let's see. The other thing in the current event snapshot is an update on one of Trump's trials. So, Stormy Daniels recently testified against Donald Trump in like very graphic detail, and the defense has been shaming her, like slut shaming her, and they are trying to argue for a mistrial due to the graphic nature of what she shared, which
This isn't even the first time she's tried, been on like, given her testimony against Trump. This is the second time that she's stood up on the
right.
stand against. And the fact of the matter is that she only answers questions that they ask.
Right. Well, what baffles me, well, the of course, whenever we have conversations about our former president, um there's just always irony. Like the irony of the fact that his defense is trying to, argue for a mistrial because of the graphic nature of her, you know, uh
And
testification.
let me just say the irony, the hypocrisy of the Republican Party, that they will try to get a mistrial for the graphic nature of Stormy Daniels talking about when they did a whole Star report against Bill Clinton talking about his sexual relationship with Monica Lewinsky.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, like, the hypocrisy.
Yeah, that's exactly what well, and the fact that, like, Trump himself has said some extremely graphic things in the past. Extremely. But it seemingly was acceptable. So.
Exactly, like the grab him by the pussy. He said literally things like grab him by the pussy, and everyone was like, "I see him grab me by the pussy," and like all this, and nobody even blinked an eye, and so
yeah. So it's very glaring. It's extremely glaring, and I think that we're gonna see. We'll see. I mean, there's so many trials happening right now. We're gonna see what happens. So, let's look at the comments first. Tiffany says, "WTF? I wouldn't pay that for a dumb gala, even if I had the money." Tiffany also said, "I would like to say that if I was a celebrity, if I was super rich, I would use my money to help people who are struggling, still like for charity." Yes, right. That would be ideal if possible.
I noticed a lot of TikTok celebrities and people are doing this Operation Olive Branch, which is supposed to be adopting Palestinian families that are affected by the. I'm a little concerned about where the money's going with that, because some of them are talking about how the money is like going to help like bribe people to get them across the border and stuff. So I'm kind of concerned about like where that money is going to help these families. But I think their heart's in the right place, and that I think that's like probably the good thing about it, is it's helping people who are affected and displaced by violence due to the war. Right. But also it's, I mean, you know, I'm critical of Hamas. I'm supportive of Israel. I just want civilians to not be affected by this, and that's basically the thing. And so I support helping families, but also
the humanitarian effort is
right.
significant. Yeah,
it's a very complicated situation, and I think I was talking about this week with some people, and it's just a very complicated situation.
Yeah. Are we ready for the mission statement? It's your turn today.
It is my turn. It is my turn. Okay, here we go. We live in a dynamic society where social media shapes us by creating greater opportunities for connection. It has led to a developing understanding of the adversity many marginalized communities face, the powers causing the adversity, and those who act as bystanders as atrocities take place in real time. Our goal with this show is to make connections and have challenging conversations about social topics, current events, pop culture, and art. Together, let's weave the threads of understanding with what privilege we have in order to learn, educate, and create in a world that's growing.
Love it. Do I hear Larity rustling around in the background?
He is. And I was going to push the window up so he could not destroy my blind.
Oh, Larity's always up to something.
I swear to God.
Tiffany says...
Internet is a thing.
Tiffany says, Ari, you're such a good reader. You should record audiobooks. Absolutely.
Oh, goodness.
So, okay. Now, we wanted to talk about dealing with narcissists tonight because this is a topic we've kind of like peppered in throughout like different episodes over the course of the last 5 seasons, right? Like we've all talked about it in very fleeting fashions, but we wanted to dedicate an entire episode to it. And I think also this episode will very much kind of go hand in hand with what we talked about last episode about like being a martyr, which, by the way, if you've not caught that episode yet, I think it's probably going to be one of my favorite episodes. Check it out if you've not watched it yet.
Yeah.
But we wanted to talk about dealing with narcissists. So before we get into any part of the conversation, I'm going to define what narcissistic personality disorder is according to the Mayo Clinic. So the Mayo Clinic says narcissistic personality disorder is a mental health condition in which people have an unreasonably high sense of their own importance. They need and seek too much attention and want people to admire them. People with this disorder may lack the ability to understand or care about the feelings of others, but behind this mask of extreme confidence, they are not sure of their self-worth and are easily upset even by the slightest of criticisms.
And I think that's important is that although it seems as though the narcissist is like this really like they seem like, you know, very confident in themselves. They have like they struggle with a lot of like
Mm-hmm.
self-worth, and there's always this needing of validation from other people.
Yeah.
Um and
If you get
yeah.
really good, if you get really, like, I feel like because we've both had a history with narcissists, like, we're kind of at a point where, like, it's a bit easier than it used to be to, like, spot somebody who's narcissistic. And, like, you can always tell because they often, they're able to really adjust to different situations, and they kind of have, like, this very charismatic mode that they go into,
Mhm.
um, that is intended to kind of like own the room that they're in. Does that make sense? And it's kind of scary to see like a person shift almost like instinctually like that, right?
Yeah, it's not
Um,
like people don't have a personality of their own. They're always just kind of like being a social chameleon of doing like whatever will make people like them the most,
mhm.
and always trying to get that social validation from other people, while at the same time like feeding that ego of theirs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So Tiffany says my ex best friend fits that definition perfectly, and my ex fiance. Oh no. Oh no. Well, so now that we've laid out the definition and we kind of have like an idea of what a narcissist might look like, have you ever dealt with a narcissist in your life?
I've dealt with a couple of different types of narcissists. I've dealt with, you know, just regular run of the mill narcissistic
Mm-hmm.
people. Um, you know, I've dated narcissistic people in the past, or just people who were toxic in the past. And I've I've dealt with covert narcissists in the past. Um, and
Ooh, explain what for those that don't know. Can you explain what a covert narcissist is?
So a covert narcissist is somebody who it's not the same as like a regular narcissist in that they will always try to like self-deprecate themselves, or like, you know, try to make it seem like they're the victim in every situation, but they still turn it around that it's always going back to them. Like it's every
Mm-hmm.
conversation is about them, and everything that you talk about goes back to them.
Yeah, they find a way to always just kind of like control the conversation so the topic is always focused on what they want. And that's usually, like you were saying, themselves.
Right.
Jackie says yes. And then Tiffany says, Donnie, you remember my ex fiance? I do remember. So, yeah, like I would say that for me, like I've had family members and relationships who are narcissists. My late grandmother, the one that I had a very, bad relationship with, she very much was a covert narcissist. She wasn't narcissistic all the time, but like if there was ever like conflict, she would always be quick to martyr herself in
Hmm.
that conflict and use that as a way to kind of like weaponize and gaslight another person to be like, oh, well, you're the one who's actually doing the wrong thing, not me. So therefore, you should feel bad, even
Hmm.
though the situation is my fault, kind of a thing. Like
I'm
this
sorry you
lack of
dealt with that.
accountability.
Yeah. That sounds awful. I'm
Yeah.
I'm really sorry because I know it's just I think I honestly think that covert narcissism was like a generational thing that was like raised, like people were raised to believe that like that was like an acceptable behavior almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think, and we probably will be talking about this a little bit early or a little bit later, but I do think that people who are narcissistic or who do engage in covert narcissism, I think a lot of the time that's like modeled behavior that they witnessed before,
Mhm.
or it was their way of coping with their own trauma, right?
Mhm.
So like it kind of like just became so comfortable for them that they kind of chameleon themselves to the extent where like, okay, this is so commonplace in my coping, here is how I treat other people, right? P.S. We are not therapists. Like, I'm just kind of piecing things together based on my own
Yeah,
life, and I know Ari is doing the same.
these are just our personal experiences. We are definitely not, and like we're not diagnosing anybody. We're not telling.
Right.
We're just sharing our personal experiences of who we think these people are. So like, and then that's why I'm not like sharing names about like anybody specific, is because it's like
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get in trouble with anybody or like cause any.
Right, no. Yeah, we're not, like, other than me referencing my one grandmother, we're not going to be mentioning, like, any other
Well,
specific names.
I think that I can reasonably say that the guy I dated in Iowa was definitely a narcissistic person. Jed, he was definitely
Oh,
somebody who I dealt with on a regular basis. You know, I'm
all right,
okay.
all right, you were like, we're not going to name drop. Oh, wait, I am going to name drop.
I don't mind. I don't mind naming my ex-boyfriend in Iowa as being narcissistic, because he definitely was like the worst boyfriend I ever had. And that I probably like, I don't mind, if he's mad at me and that says that like, oh, I wasn't, but
Well, because
that
his emotional reactions have no power over
well,
you.
just because it was like that was such a horrible time in my life, and
Mm-hmm.
I dealt with so many horrible things in that relationship, and just like just the amount of like behavior that was just like totally unacceptable. Like we would be in we would fight all the time, and then other people like women would come into the picture, like he would turn into like he would be like mean Jed to me, like he would like yell at me, and we would be like arguing, and then like his friend would come through the room, and all of a sudden he would be like pleasant Jed and like fun to be
Mm-hmm.
around Jed, and like it was just sort of like that behavior that just like made me like unsure of like what was real, or
Yeah.
like who the real person was, because he would display behavior that was like wasn't honest. Like he would argue with me and like yell at me, and was he actually doing that because he was actually mad at me, or was it just because he wanted me to feel bad and to bring me down and to like feed his ego, and then
Mm-hmm.
like get the ego, and then he found another source of ego feeding, you know
Yeah.
to get from
Yeah.
somebody else. And so he knew that he could be nice to other people, but he didn't want to be nice. It was so weird. It was so
Yeah.
weird.
Well, I thank you for sharing that. Like, I know, like, I mean, that I can only imagine how difficult that was, and being in a like, because I arguably when you lived there, you probably did not have much of a support network, considering everybody lived back in Michigan, right?
Mhm.
And in my own experience, I've noticed that like narcissists really kind of love. I mean, they really work toward isolating people, because the more a person's isolated, the more they kind of have like that, you know, power, right? Like they have like that emotive power over the
Mhm.
situation. Um, so Jackie says narcissistic people think they are gods above and beyond. They always think they are right, and they don't care how they treat people. Their opinions are the only ones that matter. Yes, exactly. Tiffany says same with me. Not sharing names, but I don't want to get attacked by the person I'm talking about. No, I totally get that. Especially if that person is still very much like kind of like in your periphery. Like I totally get that. And
It's
then
scary because like you don't want to speak out against the people who um were narcissistic, because it gives them, especially after you leave the relationship or you leave that situation, it's like if you talk about it even publicly, it's sort of like it gives them that attention that they so craved. And so
Right.
it's sort of like they get that little confidence boost of, even when you give them negative attention, it's still giving them that attention. And so
Yeah.
it's like you're still feeding that ego to them of
That's the fuel. That's what the
their,
fuel is.
and they want to know that they are bothering you, or that you are on their mind. And it's because even talking about them gives them that form of control over you and your situation. And so like mentioning them by name, or like inferring that you're talking about them, makes them feel as though they have some kind of control over you.
Yeah. Yeah, and going back to family, like my grandmother wasn't the only one who exhibited like covert narcissism. Like there are other like family members that have done this as well. Like, and the way I was able to pinpoint theirs is like if, say, other family or myself mentioned trauma, like this other person would kind of like dismiss it or gaslight you into thinking like, oh well, that really wasn't the way it was, you're just imagining it, or you were a kid, you didn't know, kind of like just like very like dismissive
Mm-hmm.
gaslighty behavior. Now, in terms of relationships, I've been in a couple of relationships where I've had people who were either full on narcissists or covert narcissists. So one of them very much kind of like preyed on my own insecurities to the extent where like I was giving so much and sacrificing so much but like not getting anything in return, to the extent where the person kind of like convinced me that like, oh, that was acceptable because I didn't deserve it. And then if I would
Mm-hmm.
try to advocate for myself, I basically would be gaslit into thinking that I was being overdramatic or crazy or so on and so forth. Now, another like so there was another ex that I had that ended up being a bit of a narcissist after we broke up, which surprised me. Didn't exhibit this behavior in the relationship, but like after the fact, like after breaking up, like I was the one that broke up with this person, and he eventually started trying to like get me to get back with him,
Mm-hmm.
and to the extent where he would like use his mental health as a reason for me needing to be with him,
Oh goodness.
or I got to the point where he threatened to unalive himself.
Oh my goodness.
And so like I was just like, if you're gonna say that, I'm gonna like have your family check on you. So like I literally contacted his family and was like, hey, that like he said this to me, I'm really worried about him. And then he got really mad at me that I told somebody, and then we have not talked since, really. So but like that's the thing, like a lot of narcissists, like they're comfortable exhibiting kind of like what you were saying earlier, Ari, like that kind of like chameleon shifting. They're comfortable with exhibiting that behavior to you, but the moment a third party comes in, or the moment that their behavior is drawn into a larger group's attention,
Mm-hmm.
they get very angry.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I think
So
we
it
talked
was
about that in a different episode too, about using your mental health as like a
weaponizing it.
weaponizing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
don't know what episode that was, but we talked about that.
I
Um,
think it was last season, wasn't it? I think it was last season. But no, we did talk about that.
but because it's sort of like using that, it's toxic behavior where you use that as a way of like trying to manipulate people around you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, but it does take two to tango in a narcissistic relationship, because I was
Yeah.
in a relationship where the person was a narcissist, and they would do things like they would whip me up into an emotional frenzy. So like, because they knew that they could get a reaction out of me, so they would just get me turning and like get me emotionally like charged. And so they would whip me up, and then they would draw back and be like, oh, it's called crazy making. They would get me all crazy, and they would
Mm.
like get me like excited. And so like I wouldn't even know like what I was saying, because I was just so worked up. And the thing about it was is that I allowed myself to be in that situation where I was reacting to that,
Mm-hmm.
and that I was allowing them to push me beyond my boundaries, and I was not recognizing the situation for what it was, and that I allowed myself to fall into that trap, and that I wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
that they did it over and over and over again because they were feeding off of that like negative energy of they could get a reaction out of me, and they could get
Yeah.
me to react in a certain way, and that they could, and that I would always, whenever I was feeling low, I would go back to this person, and I would try, because I always was like, oh, I could be friends with this person. Oh, we can be friends. Oh, I wonder if I could just get that closure I need from that person. And it was
Yeah.
always when I was like at my lowest mental health point that I would reach out to this person and be like, oh, have you moved on? Are you happy? And it's like they would just do that as a way to like torture me over and over and over again. And
Yeah.
it ruined a majority of my 20s into my 30s. And I realized I can't, part of it was me, is that I was allowing myself to have this person in my life who was a toxic person, who was a narcissist, and that I was allowing myself to get into these cycles of where I was being whipped up. Because
Mm-hmm.
the thing about it is, when you get into a fight with somebody, when you're fighting with them, it activates your fight or flight,
Mm-hmm.
and so you get that adrenaline rush, and so you become that adrenaline junkie of like
Yeah.
that fight or flight. So I was addicted to that feeling of, as playing the victim of, this person's doing this to me, this person's doing this to me. But my part to play in that is that I was addicted to this person mistreating me, almost
Yeah.
almost in the BDSM. It's like I was a sadist, and that I was like allowing this person to torture me
Mm-hmm.
in our toxic relationship. And so you get into these cycles of where you have to like break free of that cycle and say, I am not going to contact this person anymore, because even though it stimulates the adrenaline rush of fighting with somebody and getting, trying to
Mm-hmm.
get that last word, which you'll never get the satisfaction of the last word. You'll never get that satisfaction of closure. You'll never get that satisfaction of ending the
Yeah.
relationship, or getting any. It's just a toxic cycle that goes back and forth again.
Yeah. No, like that one relationship that I was talking about, I really resonated with what you just said. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
But like that initial relationship I talked about, like the person they kind of made it seem like, oh, it's hot to get Donnie angry because he's usually stoic and very placid, right? So
Mhm.
like it kind of became like this kind of eroticized thing of like, oh, working this person up at the expense of their mental health and their sense of security, right? So I do think that that's something that a lot of narcissists will do too, right? Like they are very much kind of like addicted to that dynamic, and they will use whatever opportunity they can to really just antagonize somebody else's emotions to the point where they're so compromised that they can't see past the situation.
Mhm.
So, oh, go ahead. Were you about to say something?
No, I was just agreeing
Mhm.
with you, and I'm thank you. I'm so glad that you're beyond that situation now.
I'm glad we both are. We're we're both free.
We're free.
uh,
I'm free.
Tiffany says, Donnie, I had an awful realization. My ex fiancé wanted me to move to his state where I would have no support system instead of him moving where he and I would both have support. Interesting. He was trying to isolate me. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so now, like, I've always been that. So I will say that I've had frequent conversations with my therapist about narcissism because I also like I had an ex who was very clearly a narcissist, and they tried to like gaslight me into thinking that I was a narcissist too. And mind you, I do think that individuals who aren't full-fledged narcissists can exhibit some narcissistic behavior, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I my therapist I asked the question during a therapy session of like, oh my God, am I a narcissist? Am I a narcissist? And she was like, if you can ask yourself that question, then you're not a narcissist. And I'm like, oh, whew. Because I was always that person, like, I would like deep dive, like, I would take like these narcissism quizzes. I would look up
I wasn't
lists.
I was like, I would literally be like, I would take test after test of like, am I a narcissist? Am I a covert narcissist? Am I a bad person? Literally all the time, because I'd be dealing with narcissistic people and be like, am I the actual narcissist in this relationship? Am
Am
I the
I the
bad?
problem?
And I would score so low on the test. They'd be like, you are definitely not the narcissist in whatever relationship you're dealing with.
Uh,
Be like, it'd be like you have to score like a 40 or something. I'd score like a 5 or a 6, maybe like a 13 at most on my bad days. But like, because I'd be like being like a social media filming day for me, it'd be like a score like a 13. And be like, you have to get like a
yeah.
40 or something to get like pass the test, and be like, not even close, not even close.
I think, well, because, yeah, like, same here. And I would also look up these lists of, like, oh, what are the signs? So, like, one list that I remember referencing was one from Healthline that has, like, the 9 signs you're dating a narcissist. And these 9 signs are the individual was charming at first in the love bomb stage. They would often steamroll over conversation to discuss their greatness, or they would overcompensate. They would feed off your compliments. They lacked empathy. They don't have any or many long term friends. They pick on you constantly. They gaslight you. They think they're right about everything and never apologize or hold themselves accountable. And they lash out when you show them that you're done with it. So, like when I would go through those lists and I'd be like, have I ever done that? Have I ever, have I ever done those things? Now,
But
like,
Donny, I've been your friend for over 15 years.
I know, likewise. And feel like I feel like we are self-aware enough or we'd be able to point out to each other like, "Hey, Donny, what are you doing? Hey, Ari, what was that? Like, what are you doing?" kind of a thing. But no, like I do think that usually narcissists lack a sense of self-awareness, right? Because like in their world, like they kind of create like this illusion of grandeur surrounding themselves, and that completely compromises their sense of self-awareness.
And the thing
Oh,
about it is that I am one of those people that suffers with imposter syndrome, but I don't think I'm great at all. I was actually crying on video
oh,
about it today.
oh, Ari, no, I think you're great.
No, I'm just like there's such a desire, like such a push in our society that you have to be like famous, or like you have to like always be like, this person who has like, because it was about this like Substack about like how you have to get the most views or get the most clicks, or you have to sell the most books, or you have to do the most things. And to me it's like, can I just enjoy the thing that I'm doing without having
Yeah.
to, you know what I mean?
That's kind of when I wrote that blog post, that's kind of what I had in mind too, because like I feel like this late stage capitalistic like there's this late stage capitalistic notion that each of us should be an assembly line of reactions, engagement, uh, production, right? And when we get so focused on that, I feel like it robs us of being able to take joy in the things that we love to do, like you were saying. So, like, no, I don't blame your emotional reaction for making that realization because I feel like it's very sobering to kind of have to face that and realize that like yeah there's a lot of systems at play here that really exasperate.
Well, because they want us to focus on the numbers. They want us to focus on people as like, clicks or engagement, and like, but we're not focusing on like the people actually reading those things. Like 100 people, like I would rather have like 3 good people who like really enjoy it rather than like 100 people who like barely read it. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely. Well, like I used to get like really hard pressed about YouTube, right? Like I'd get really upset over views and likes or whatever. And I realized that I'm not enjoying it when I'm worrying about those things. Like
Mhm.
I don't get enrichment out of it that way.
Yeah.
But but oh my god, is the system narcissistic itself?
It really is. It really makes us
Do 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 do
narcissistic.
do 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 do.
I think it forces us into narcissistic tendencies, in that it wants us to be a certain way, doesn't it? I feel like that's the inherentness about technology, is that it forces us to be like, and that was the thing that I hated about the changes with YouTube, is that YouTube used to be a social media platform in which you could do video responses to people,
Mm-hmm.
and that it was
Yeah.
more of like an engagement between people. But then all of a sudden it was more like TV, in that you watched somebody and then you left comments and that you could respond, but it was more like it was focused on the person. That was more like a cult of personality, and that you
Yeah.
couldn't actually like actively engage with each other.
Yeah. So, do we have narcissistic tendencies? Do we have any narcissistic tendencies?
Um, I really like compliments.
I do too. I do sometimes self-deprecate for the sake of a compliment. It's a very toxic way to fish for a compliment. Still workshopping on that. Still working on that.
Can I give you the compliment of the show? Because I love giving you compliments, Johnny.
Well, I love giving you compliments, so let's have a compliment battle.
So I really like that shirt that you're wearing. It looks very like mid-century modern, and like the sweater, like the what's that? It's
Oh,
Argyle, isn't it? I really
it
like the Argyle.
is.
It makes me feel like you're going to like a 50s sock hop, like a diner or something, and that you're about to put like a dime in the jukebox, and you're about to be like, play that jukebox, Mr. Man. I want a milkshake.
Oh, not the milkshake.
I love it. It's very cool.
You know, here's a compliment for you. Well, first, thank you for that very thoughtful compliment. Since you started wearing these glasses, I mean, I've always been kind of obsessed with your aesthetic, but like these glasses are both like cerebral and playful. Like I feel like you're going to you're going to like gallivant into a library with a coffee in hand and like Belle from Beauty and the Beast or something like that,
I'm so glad
singing.
that somebody likes my glasses, because my mom said that I look like a 70s like reject, like a funk reject, that I look like Janis Joplin or John Lennon. Like,
What's wrong with that, Mom?
she's like, she says it looks okay, but like, why are they so big? And why can't you wear contacts? And I'm like, because I like wearing glasses.
Oh, you look like I think it's the perfect aesthetic, and I think that you look stunning.
If Oprah wears the same glasses, there's nothing wrong with it.
Tiffany says, Donnie, you have a sweater on. Does it tickle? Yes, it does. So, like, I don't wear a lot of sweaters, but I do wear a lot of cardigans, and this is technically I think it's a cardigan, something
Oh,
like that.
I always wear my favorite cardigan too. I had it, I took it off. But I always wear this cardigan. I love this cardigan.
Oh,
The paisley.
I think that's cute.
I love this cardigan. It's my favorite.
It's so cute. Look at us just showering each other with compliments right now. Um, so can a person have trauma after navigating a narcissist? What does that look like? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I
What was
know
the
like
question?
the question was, can a person have trauma after navigating a narcissist?
Oh yeah,
What does that
absolutely.
look like?
Um, it what it is it's a lot of questioning behavior about like, because when you deal with somebody who's gaslighting you all the time, there's a lot of like, am I doing, is anything that I'm doing correct? Is
Hmm.
anything, is my reality, a lot of questioning your history about like what happened during the relationship, a lot of like fogginess regarding what happened during the time that you were with that person, because there was a lot of like revisionist history with them, that they would tell you, oh,
Mm.
this didn't happen, or oh, this happened, and you would have to be like questioning yourself about what actually happened during the course of that relationship.
Yeah.
So there's always like, when you leave that relationship, there's always like trying to suss out the details of what you remembered as being true and what was not true and what they told you. It's always like kind of like coming back to self and like
Mm.
making sure that you come to your own reality again.
No,
Um,
absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I think that's the best way to describe it, honestly, because that would be my answer to that question too. Like, kind of just like reforging who you are
mhm.
after like having somebody just completely shake everything up. Tiffany says, "I'm sorry, you're not dominating the comments, Tiffany. There's only like a couple of people on, so like you're good. We love your comments." What's the difference between having narcissistic tendencies and being a clinical narcissist, and how do we in our society conflate ego and self-confidence for the other? Ooh, Ari, how do we begin to unpack that one?
So I was thinking that the difference between having narcissistic tendencies, so like being in a society where, we are self-focused, like showing tendencies of narcissism, of just being like, concerned about our self-image, or being concerned with how we appear on social media, or like posting selfies and things like that. And being a narcissist is that one, it affects our interpersonal relationships. Posting selfies and things like that, or being self-focused, does not affect our relationships nor the functionality of our life. So
Hmm.
being a narcissist really does affect the functionality of your life.
I thought I heard something fall. I was like,
No, my cat is playing with papers.
Larity.
He's playing it right next to the microphone too. He just wanted to do some ASMR for you.
I love it. Was very stimulating. It was very stimulating. No, like I think that was a great explanation of that. I really do think that social media plays such a huge impact because like it I mean it allows us to kind of like shape this image of who we envision ourselves to be, right? And I think that it's kind of like a very convenient space for narcissists to flourish,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Now, have you ever taken the? Oh, so we have talked about taking the narcissist test, and we both have proved to ourselves that we are in fact not narcissists. But I guess like one good way to now that we're kind of like on the home stretch of the episode. By the way, don't forget to subscribe, click like, all that jazz. But um, how do we even begin navigating these tough relationships if you can't cut them off? How do you set boundaries with a narcissist? Mm.
So for me, like, um, what I did is, uh, if you can, just cutting them out of your life completely. That
Mm-hmm.
it means like breaking up with these people. It means moving on with your life, because a lot of people who are narcissistic, they're just going to keep being narcissistic, and it's going to keep, it's a cycle that just never ends.
Yeah.
However, not all relationships you can cut off. You had a grandparent that was narcissistic, and you can't just cut your grandma out of your life forever.
Right. So that means like there's got to be a point where you create boundaries with those people. Like I know for me, like I would also agree with running. Like Tiffany just says, "How do I set boundaries?" Run. No, like I like that would kind of be my advice too. Like run. Like because like not here. The thing with me is, and what I've observed is like a lot of narcissists, when they are in martyr mode, will do their best to kind of make themselves seem like they are a broken person to kind of like garner sympathy so that you kind of like feel like this impending sense of responsibility of needing to be that person's foundation or that support network, right?
Have you ever had a
And
boss that was a narcissist?
what was that?
Have you ever had a boss that was a narcissist?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes. Like I have attended master classes on gaslighting as a result
How
of
did you deal
those.
with that?
I left. I had to
So
leave.
I had for me to deal with like bosses that were nurses, what I did is first of all, when going into like a workplace situation where you're dealing with a narcissist, you just like tell yourself like, okay, I'm not gonna let this person affect my mental health. And I'm just like
Mm-hmm.
not like you just set aside this boundary that this person is going to try to do everything they can to try to like break you down or like get in your ego space. And you just have to like I feel like you have to kind of like make yourself small and just like a tunnel vision. Like I'm just not like this person can affect me in any
Yeah.
meaningful way. Like I'm just gonna do my job and I'm going to point out like I feel like you have to kind of keep a print out of your job description of what you do during like what you have signed up to do during your day. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to keep pointing to what you have signed up to do and like
Yeah.
what you just like you have to like no this is
Because a
what you have
narcissist will always gaslight you into doing more than you should be doing.
or just doing stuff that you're not supposed to be doing and like just
Mm-hmm.
making you do all sorts of crazy stuff I don't even know but or that you're not doing your job trying to fire you over stuff like or writing you up over stuff that like is not even your job responsibility and like what
Mm-hmm.
what is this what
Well,
is
and
this
in the workplace, I have found that typically narcissists are people who are wanting either they're on a power trip or they are the people who really value elevating themselves over others, right?
yeah
So they will like do whatever they can to kind of like to widen the vacancy between themselves and like what they would think are their underlings, right? Like it's very dehumanizing, I would say. Like in my experience in that type of situation, like finding a better opportunity was like my best way of getting through it. Now, like I guess when it coming back to relationships, like this is just my personal opinion. You cannot fix a narcissist.
no
If you feel the flicker of responsibility that you can fix a narcissist, um, one, I would ask you to unpack why you have that need. Been there, done that in the past, which one could argue
we have a
that's
whole
even
episode about fixing people by the way
yeah, yeah. We like I mean arguably even that could be considered narcissistic, like this need to feel needed, right? Like this power in feeling needed. But you can't fix a narcissist no matter how much they might make it seem like that's your job, no matter how much they kind of make it seem like your relationship or connection depends on that dynamic. You cannot do that. And the more and more you try, the more it's going to kind of like suck you into this void of you know, toxic cycles, right? And it's just
yeah
not going to do anything. If
yeah
anything, it's going to really compromise a person's mental health. It's going to really stoke your own insecurities. And I know, like, for me, like, it took me a very long time to even get comfortable making connections with people after being in a relationship with a narcissist. Because, kind of like what you were saying earlier, like, you kind of like question that reality of, like, is this who the person actually is? Or am I is this somebody completely different, right?
hmm
So it can be very now family members, I mean, if you can make boundaries, that's probably like the best. Like I always opt for like if you can like maybe distance yourself from a family member who is being very troubling with their narcissistic behavior, that might be the best route to take. Um However, I would also say that there are ways. I would say there are ways to dance around narcissists where you can like kind of like you were saying earlier, minimize your reactions, like be very stoic. Like if they say something that they typically know will like aggravate you or get a reaction out of you, just don't react. My one thing that I do that pisses them off.
usually
I
what it is when you talk to a narcissist you have to commit to that conversation. And if you can't commit to that conversation, if it's just too much, you just have to walk away from that conversation.
Yes. Knowing when to walk away, knowing when to pick and choose your battles, that's important. My way of coping would be by asking them questions.
Oh, you do?
So they'll say something problematic or manipulative, and I'll be like, "Oh, is that so?" Or I'll be like, "That's interesting. Could you repeat that?" Or I'll be like, "Could you reframe that, please? I'm not sure I quite understood what you said."
I heard that's called gray walling, that when you say like very like benign things back to a narcissist, where you're not reacting, you're just kind of like, oh, that's nice, or I see that you are doing that, or where you're just like, you're not reacting, but you're just kind of like saying like really kind of like non-responsive things back to them. It makes them very angry when you do that.
It does. It does.
Because they
Oh
think
my
you're being like,
goodness.
they take that as aggression for some reason.
Oh yeah, they think that you're being passive aggressive. Now, like, there might be a small part of me that's a little petty, like when I notice somebody narcissistic behaving that way. But again, is it me being petty, or is it just like a coping mechanism from like having to deal with narcissistic people?
You have to really not have any sort of malice in your voice. You just have to
Mm-hmm. It has
just
to be
sit.
as
Right.
disarming as it possibly can be. And sometimes you can successfully disarm them, but also sometimes like that in of itself is an energy that you're putting forth.
It is
So
emotional labor.
yeah, sometimes just not saying anything or removing yourself from a situation is the best route to take. Let's be honest.
Are we coming back to I need to learn how to be silent?
Well, like now it's like we need to learn to pick our battles. That's been something that my therapist has been trying to teach me, because like I'm always, if I see something wrong, I'm always like fight mode. Star Trek bigots, attack all of them for being bigots. You know, kind of that type of situation. I
That's
don't know
true.
what that choreography was, but it was.
Can I do it with you? I think it's called skating.
I would have no idea. Oh my goodness. Everyone, this was such a good conversation. As
I had
always,
fun.
thank you. I did too. Any parting words, Ari?
Um, Run!
Run. Okay, so here's our non-therapist advices, because we're not therapists. So, do not fix. You can't put a band-aid on a gaping crack in a wall, because that's not going to do anything. So either set boundaries, diffuse, or remove, or
Right.
run. Anyway, everyone, thank you again for tuning in. Don't forget to click like, subscribe to our respective channels, subscribe to Ari's channels, Strange Nothings, Tarot Time with Ari, or Boocha Baby. And again, thank you for always supporting us. We really appreciate it. Have a good rest of your night. Bye.